stood by Randy Barnes back in May of 1990. And there you see next to him, Joe Kovacs, the reigning world champion that beat the reigning Olympic champion Crouser in that phenomenal event in Doha, and now has to respond to a world record performance.
So you got an idea who I'm about to introduce. If you know Sorinex, you know that we have a root in not only weightlifting but throwing. My father, Richard Soren, who started Sorinex in 1980, he was started weightlifting, and he got pretty good at weightlifting. So the guy he was lifting with said, "Hey, how about you go try out for the track team," basically to get him out of the gym. And so Pop started throwing the discus, which got him understanding how to train for athletics. Brought him down to South Carolina on a full scholarship to throw the discus. First Soren ever to go to college. From that, started weightlifting, training, more so building weightlifting equipment. So if you think about it, in many ways, my journey started a lot the same way. So throwing has been in the blood of us for years. So to have who is arguably the greatest thrower of all time, any event, sitting on stage right now, and I've been watching this gentleman since he was a freshman in college at the University of Texas. Terry Todd, the late Terry Todd, and I used to talk about this young kid, Ryan Crouser, coming to Texas and how he could be a great one, and followed your career and like all this cool stuff. So I've been watching him for many years. Just for a little bit of context, because he won't tell you. He is a world record holder in both indoor and outdoor shot put, and as you see, he obliterated a record that was 31 years old. Kind of they thought was like the upper echelon of what the human capacity could even take. Broke it by almost a foot. He's won 2 Olympics, the 2016, which is his first Olympics. He went to, not only did he win the Olympics, he set the Olympic record. And then on the most recent Olympics, what would be the 2020/2021 Olympics?
Yeah, it's called the 2020.
It's kind of 2020. He won that one also with a throw that was only, 3 centimeters less than your world record?
6.
6, sorry, so it was that far. The second furthest throw of all time happened to be at the Olympic Games, and I believe you won the Olympics by almost a meter or so, close to.
70 centimeters.
Yeah, ridiculousness. Other known fact that I think is super cool for you throw nerds out there, 22 meters is 72 feet 3 inches roughly.
2, yep.
Yep, and that's like the upper echelon. That would have won almost every Olympics or World Championships just about ever, barring 2 or 3. So that's like, if you've hit 22 meters, you're like a guy. Like, there's no question. And most people that are lucky enough to do it once in their career do it once in their career. The second amount of throws that a human has ever had at 22 meters in competition is Ulf Timmermann of the East German fame during a different rules era, if we want to say. 37? Mm-hmm. 37 times he had done that. Now, he also had the Olympic record and world record. I believe as of about a week ago, you've had over 200 throws over 22 meters.
Yeah, 201.
201. So when you have the highest throw of all time, the Olympic records, and you have almost 5 times more throws at a world-class level than the second place person ever to live, you're honestly seeing greatness. Ryan Crouser, we love having you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, well, it's an honor to be here. Yeah, a little bit of background for me. I would remember being a freshman in high school, and we had to give a speech, and I was deathly afraid of public speaking. And in front of my class of 30, I had to give a 5-minute speech. I remember my mom dressed me up in my nicest little light blue collared shirt, and I just sat in the back of class and sweated through it. And by the time I got up there, I had a ring of sweat down to here, armpits sweated down to my pants, and gave my 5-minute speech in under 2 minutes because I was talking so fast. So hopefully we can overcome that a little bit, and I can entertain you nonetheless, even if I do sweat through this shirt and talk way too fast. So yeah, as a shot putter, it's always a little bit difficult to convey exactly what we do. At least I'm among strength enthusiasts, so you guys have a little bit more perspective. So the best analogy I can come up with is if you go to the bowling alley and take the heaviest bowling ball, that's typically a 16-pounder, and you go to a basketball court, stand on the free throw line, you turn around, and if you shoot a 3/4 court shot, that's the world record in the shot put. So a little bit of perspective for other sports fans. And so for me, I got started in track and field in 5th grade because it was the first sport we could go out to and represent our middle school. I was playing baseball, basketball, football. I did track because I got to wear my my middle school uniform and compete with my friends. And so I did everything, all of the events. I was lucky enough to come from a family of throwers. They didn't all push me in that direction, but when I showed interest in it, they got me started on the right foot with the fundamentals. My dad was an alternate on the '84 Olympic team. He got 4th at the Olympic trials, so just missed out. My uncle was '88 and '92 Olympian, and the best part, my cousin was 2016 Olympian, and we were actually roommates at the Olympic Village. So it's been a bit of a family affair, and I think what attracted me originally to the throwing events, and especially to shot, and track and field in general, is the ease of which you can measure the performance. There's you, and you're competing against really yourself. You can go out and throw a personal best. All it is a tape measure, and the tape measure never lies. So if you go out there and you throw farther than you did yesterday, you throw a personal best, you can say wholeheartedly, I'm better today than I was yesterday. And that's such a special feeling. There's very few things in life that you can wholeheartedly say, I'm better today than I was yesterday. And that's really what attracted me to it. A bit of background, I went to the University of Texas and graduated with my undergrad in economics, minor in business, and a master's in finance in 5 years. So I was busy in the classroom, and I've always been a numbers guy. I actually did 2 years of engineering, made it through all the hard courses before I decided this isn't really what I want to do. Took a finance course for my business minor, and shoot, I can knock out this undergrad early and go into master's in finance, so that's the route I took. And that kind of is a little bit of my background as far as me being a numbers guy. I've always been math, science, hard numbers, and I've tried to apply that to myself and my programming and now my coaching. And I've been self-coached since the spring of 2016, and I've really been lucky enough to be in a position to do that. Any athlete that says they're self-coached, really you have to have some type of foundation that led to that. So I was lucky enough to have coaches that not only taught me the fundamentals, but taught me to think about what I was doing, and not just purely give. To have a successful athlete, there has to be give and take. You have to teach the athlete what they need to know instead of just telling them. And so when Bert talked to me about coming out to SummerStrong and speaking in front of 300 plus people in a field that I have no formal education in, I said, okay, let's give it a try. And I sat down and tried to draw out, in my quantitative way of thinking, a way to convey how I approach shot putting. And I've dubbed this how to throw the shot put far. Bit ironically, simply because as I work through this, it's not just how to throw the shot put far. It can be applied to any sport, anything athletic related. I believe this applies to. The balances will change and the formula might shift a little bit, but the general rules are very, very similar. And so at the top we have performance. That's just the throw itself, the meet, the competition, the judge of the entire rest of this pyramid. And I left off one thing right here. And so right below that we have optimizers. It's a really, really small piece. And before I jump in too deep into this, I would like for this to be a give and take. So if you guys have questions about anything on here, I'm pretty much an open book. I'm hoping it'll be an open Q&A where I can take a deep dive wherever you guys want to go.
What's your favorite method of recovery?
Favorite method of recovery? I would say sleep. So that's the number one thing. So I'll run through this triangle, and then wherever we want to go from there, we can deep dive into it. So yeah, at the top you've got the performance, and the best word I came up with is optimizers. It's 24 hours, 48 hours on into the competition, And the best analogy I have for it is you win a major championship months or years in advance, but you can lose it the night before. So it's what you're doing 24 hours in. How well do you travel? How well do you manage that anxiety, that stress, the mental approaches that you take to make sure that when you step onto that field to compete, that you're at the best you can be. And you'll see as I work through this, there's a lot of flow. There's no hard lines on this. The mental approach right here is directly reflected in the optimized day of mental approach. I mean, what you're doing 6 months out and how you approach that will be reflected on how you perform on the optimizer. And that mental approach really, really is a cohesive unit. And so with the optimizers, they're things to be aware of, but they can make you a little bit better, but if you don't take care of them, they can make you a lot worse. So as an international athlete, I do a lot of travel, and so working with managing circadian rhythms, using caffeine as a benefit instead of a detriment when I'm going overseas is a key thing. So there's a number of things. If you guys want to hear more about travel, I can talk about that a lot. Carbo loading, exposure to sun, longer term, low intensity to adapt faster. We can circle back to that. Let me get through this and then we'll circle back to it. And so the chunk of the block really breaks down to power output and technical mastery. If you want to throw the shot put far, you have to have a very high power output. So power is the rate at which work is done. And so on the works, if you want to increase power, you either have to increase the amount of work, which tends to generalize much more in the strength aspect, or the speed at which you do it. So a lot of VBT, you have to be explosive. So applying this to other athletes, if you have an offensive lineman, their power output is going to look kind of similar to a thrower's. If you have a sprinter, they're going to be much more speed heavy. Their power will still be high, though the work that they're doing might be slightly lower. And you have a blend of specificity between it and technical mastery. And that's really where the magic happens in the throwing events in most sports. You'll look at kids in the weight room that might not have the highest power output, but somehow they manage to get it done on the field. And the technical mastery is where I feel like I've had the strongest impact on my career. Really what has helped me excel, I know a massive breakthrough was when I started approaching the throwing aspect and the drills with the same analytical mindset as I did programming. I would sit down and write programs and hammer out all the details, and I would just go out and throw. And so I see so many athletes that just go out and they throw hard every single day. And so when I started approaching this thinking, I'm spending half of my time on technical mastery, but I'm approaching it like I'm just hitting a max set every single day in the weight room. That there's no way that is optimal in terms of acquiring mastery of whatever technical endeavor you're doing. And so I broke it down into how can I further optimize what I'm doing in terms of drills, technique work. Hard throwing days are an absolute key, but that's not where I've made the most gains in terms of acquiring an efficient technique. A lot of that work is done just like in the weight room at 70%, 80% is where I can engage the parts of the body I want, manage the technical changes that I want, and see the result when I crank it up to 100%. But you want to make those changes at a lighter level. And so the technical proficiency is a huge, huge key aspect, and it's where the magic happens. It can almost seem like it's difficult to quantify. I do my best to constantly quantify that data, but it's a constant struggle because I feel like everyone thinks that there is some magic that happens on that soft skills side. And if you can attack that with the same mindset, you can kind of break it down because it can be very intimidating. And in the middle of this squiggly line, and that's kind of where the specificity happens. So for me as a rotational athlete, I'm doing a lot of specific rotational work, isometrics, eccentric, applying a French contrast model to a rotational athlete is what I found a lot of success with. And then as I move down, the mental approach has been a huge key for me, something as I've gotten later in my career, I continue to work on and continue to see where I have the most to grow is on the mental approach. Quick story, I was working with some athletes at the Olympic Training Center, And I was an athlete, but I was also writing some programs for them and helping coach them. And it was like the first week, and they were struggling under some volume. And I asked the guys, hey, are you proud of the work that you put in today? And they were pissed off. They did not like that at all. And they're like, man, my ankle's hurt, and I didn't sleep that well last night. I was like, well, so you're not proud of the work that you put in today? And, well, it's not that. I didn't sleep. And it was a lot of just, they were pissed at me. And I just asked a question, like, are you proud of the work you put in today? And I feel like that is really where the key for long-term mental approach comes in, is day to day, are you proud of the work that you put in? It's really, really straightforward, and it's a simple question you can ask your athletes. Are you proud of the work that you put in today? And the good ones will say yes. A very few will say yes. A lot of people get pissed off because they're not proud of the work they put in. They view it as an attack on themselves or whatever it might be. A lot of excuses will come out. But if you can go a day and say, yeah, I'm proud of the work I put in. You can go a week saying, yeah, I'm proud of the work I put in today. You do that for weeks, months, a year, then you know going into this for the optimizer, the mental approach, there's no better confidence than walking into a competition knowing that you prepared to the absolute best of your ability. There's no way to bulletproof your confidence more than that. You know that you prepared as best you could. There's nothing more that you could have done better. And I'm not saying every training day is going to be great. You're going to have tired days. You're going to have flat days. You get sick. Life happens. It's how do you react to those things, and did you do the best you could today with what you were given? And you do that consistently, and you can walk into a meet with more confidence than you've ever had, and no matter how you walk away from it. So I was lucky enough to be a part of the greatest shot put competition of all time, Doha 2019 World Championships. So quick rundown, I was throwing really well, competing really well. And round one, I'm early in the series, I throw 22-30 high and break the world championship record, the farthest throw ever in a world championship. I think to myself, that's it. I've thrown the farthest anyone's ever thrown in a world championship. I'm gonna win this thing. And then later in the exact same round, Tom Walsh goes 22-90, throws a 35 centimeter lifetime best out of the blue. He was the most surprised person in the stadium, I think. And I'm thinking to myself, and my PR at the time was 22.74, and that was the world lead. And I'm thinking to myself, how did this happen? We got to dig ourselves out of a hole, and I've got to do something I haven't done. And I continued to progress through the rounds, ended up with another 22.72, and had a really, really solid series. Find myself in round 6. I'm in second at the start of the final round, and then from the bottom of the list comes Joe Kovacs, improves 1.10 and throws a lifetime best of 22.91, passing Walsh by 1 centimeter. And now I find myself in third place in a comp that I broke the world championship record at. And I just can't believe it. And round 6, I'm the last in the order because I had the farthest throw, or I'm second to last in the order, sorry, because I had the second farthest throw. Try to respond to Joe Kovacs' 22.91. I've been kind of trying to technically execute in all 5 rounds. Round 6, I said, I've got to throw a lifetime best. I'm just going to throw this as hard as I can. Throw shank one way out the right sector, which I rarely do, and it was 22.90. And so lost by 1 centimeter to Joe Kovacs and won on the tie break against Tom Walsh. And so that was the greatest shot put of all time. All 3 competitors had massive PRs. And I got so many questions afterwards, like, how disappointed are you to win that you didn't win? And I said, I threw a lifetime best, a massive lifetime best, in the final round with 1 throw remaining. And I prepared as best I could. I gave it my all. I walked away pretty happy. I mean, I couldn't control what the other guys did. I executed my plan to the best of my ability. I broke the world championship record in round 1. I applied pressure throughout the rounds, and I came through with a huge, massive last throw that happened to be 1 centimeter short. So that's the level of mental approach that I feel like really, really can add to athletes and give them confidence when they can wholeheartedly say I'm as prepared for this as I can be. You walk in, you win or you lose, it doesn't really matter. You're at the absolute best you could have been. So that level of confidence is something that you can't replicate that. And sleep and recovery is a huge, huge key. The biggest thing I see with athletes now in the era of phones and constant bombardment of whatever it might be, distractions, I guess would be the best way to say it, is a lack of sleep. I work with college kids and they don't sleep enough. And a lot of it is like, oh, I just got 6 hours last night, whatever it might be. Making a conscious effort to sleep. Everyone is a little bit different. For me, I need to sleep more. I'm at 9 hours and 15 minutes is optimal for me. But making an actual commitment, setting a schedule and sticking to a plan to make sure that you get enough sleep is, I'd say, the number one thing that harms athletes currently. They don't sleep enough. And when you make that conscious effort to commit to getting good sleep, there's a number of things you can use. Blue blocker light glasses with blue light affecting your circadian rhythms. Once again, reflecting back to TVs, cell phones, etc. Your brain doesn't want to shut off. So if you can block that blue light, expose yourself to some yellow light, it can help jumpstart that. Weighted blanket. Sleeping at a proper temperature. A lot of times, people tend to sleep better in a cooler room. There's a lot of information out there on sleep. I think a lot of athletes just aren't aware of how important sleep is. And so, moving to the last one is nutrition. I'll just brush on it. You guys have had there was a fantastic nutrition talk yesterday. I'm not going to even try and match that in any way, shape, or form. That's just its own element. It's something that I believe is equally important. And the biggest thing is with this pyramid, you see that these three things really complement each other. They really shouldn't be divided. The mental aspect, if you're locked in mentally, attacking every single day, you're going to be sleeping better. You're going to be recovering better. If your nutrition is on point, you're going to be sleeping better. Your mental output on life, if you're eating quality foods, is going to be better. Just everything of these three affect each other, and in turn affect your technical mastery and your power output. You're sleeping well, you're eating well, you're going to be training well. And so for me, there's a little bit of background, but on the numbers. I meant to jump to this earlier. So yeah, throwers are pretty explosive and dynamic. I meant to drop my numbers earlier. So 550 bench, 725 back squat, 160K power snatch, 36-inch vertical at 315, and a 3 meters 42 broad at 315, so 11'2". And and for those VBT guys, I love VBT. It's a huge part of my training. My wattage, I was talking with Travis, my wattage is a little bit off. We calculate ours differently, so I'll just say best is 230 kilos at 201 on a hang pull, calculated on pen and paper, old school way, 4,500 watts. And best snatch, 140 kilos at 265, 2.65 meters per second, so 3,600 watts. And so that's the part I missed early on. And so when I was writing out this pyramid, it was actually last night, I realized this is a really terrible analogy for how to represent performance. The pyramid doesn't really make sense when you really take a deep dive and think about high-end performance. It's really much more better conveyed as a sphere, with the core being these bottom things, kind of the levels working out and expanding with technical mastery and power output. And at the very outside of the sphere is the performance. That's what people see. You don't see the inside of the sphere. You don't see the sleep that went into it, the mental approach, the nutrition. All people see is the top-end performance, and that is the very outside of the sphere. And still, the whole thing that I've tried to develop and convey, it's still not perfect. 2017 World Championships, I went in feeling extremely confident. It was my first full-time year as a pro. I was training unbelievably well. My weight room numbers were fantastic. PRs and everything, plyometrics were fantastic. And the week of World Champs, I lost my throw. Throwing is a lot like swinging a golf club. If you're nice, fluid, come through, hit it straight 300 yards, and then you say, oh, I hit that one 300 yards, I'm gonna really crank on this, and it's a 100-yard shank off to the right. And that's just like how throwing is. It's so much rhythm and timing. In 2017 champs, I felt like I did everything right, and I lost my throw of the week of, went in, got 5th place when I was favored to win. And so that was a very difficult learning moment, but it really taught me that you can prepare everything you want as to the best of your ability, and you're still just gonna have days when you lose your throw. And which leads me to my next, you prepare as best as you can, and it very rarely goes as expected. I've told a number of people there's 2 types of world records. There's the finally world record, where you've known you can do it, you've known it's there, and you throw it, and the first thing you say is finally. That was the video that you guys saw. I'd had 6 competitions over 2 years going into the comp where I would have bet the house that I was gonna break the world record, and it didn't happen. I got a little bit tight. All the pieces were there. I got a little bit tight, tried to force it, did not get the world record. And so then I finally got it there in Eugene. But that was the 7th time that I thought I was gonna break the world record before I finally did. So let the ball go, and only thing in my head was finally, there it is. And the other type is the surprise world record. I actually was lucky enough to have one of those, and it's when it kind of comes out of the blue. You prepare as best you can, but things aren't looking great, and you let the ball go, and you're surprised at how far it goes. And the athlete that did that performance is the most surprised out of everybody. So you can have good surprises. That was me. This indoor, I threw a lifetime best, 23:38 at Simplot. I'd been sick that week. I just traveled from New York, had a sinus infection, missed 2 days of training, and went out there, and it was like, gosh, I feel bad. Warm up for an extra 30 minutes. Just almost pulled out of the comp, but it was an expo, so had to show off for the high school kids. And yeah, round 1, got in the ring, and all I was thinking was like, just try and bang out a 22-meter throw and make the people happy and let it go, in 23:38. And so there was no indicator, nothing on that anything was there. In prep for a meet, usually I'll be throwing 22 low, 22:30 is kind of what my benchmark would have been for if I want to be in the upper 22s, and I was struggling to throw 2060, 2070 2 days before. So yeah, that's 3 meters improvement over what I was throwing in training, and it was kind of out of the blue. So that was the most surprising one for me. And I feel like looking at being analytical, the biggest thing that I've found to help me be successful is record keeping and journaling. So I've kind of drawn this up from years and years of training logs, and being self-coached, I feel like it's especially important to keep records and to keep a training journal that is goal-oriented, but also with some reflection. So every week I write out goals of what my training block is for that week, and then at the end of the week I evaluate how well I achieve those goals and how we can improve that training week when we do it, if we do it in the next block or if we do it next year. And same thing for month, and then same thing for the year. And so that's been a key for me, consistently doing that over my 7 years as a self-coach professional. It's continuing to get better, and I feel like my programming continues to adapt. I'm always taking things from wherever I see, if it makes sense to me. I was going to ask Travis if he's got bugs in my weight room, because his training looks a little too similar to mine to be a coincidence. But yeah, I'm constantly trying to adapt and improve. Over 7 years, I've never repeated an identical block. Everything has had a slight change or a slight tweak. I don't think I'll ever have the perfect training program. I think if the moment that you do say, I've got the perfect training program, you don't. It's always learning, always adapting, but always changing with the reason why. And so yeah, I'll just open this up to questions. I feel like a Q&A style, what you guys want to learn about is where we'll go. We'll start with Bert.
All right, so I literally jumped on top of the coffee table in my house at the 2021 Olympics. For the 2016, I was equally as freaked out. So what is the difference between going to the Olympics as your first one ever and as compared to being the defending champion, and how did both of them had the same result, Olympic record, but how did that go into it as a freshman to an extent, and then those two experiences?
Yeah, so the difference between the two Olympics from 2016 to the 2020 Olympics, for me was absolutely huge. So 2016, I was straight out of college. I actually missed my graduation to go to my first professional track meet in May of 2016. And so fast forward 1 month after that, I surprised myself and threw a lifetime best at the Olympic trials to qualify. And even then, I was still kind of the dark horse. That wasn't especially well known in the sport. Hadn't competed in an international competition since 2009. I did a World Youth Championship. So it'd been 7 years, no international competition, and here I come, this kid fresh out of college. I'm a pro now. I'm going to the Olympics, and so my training went really well. I'd been very frustrated throughout that year. Working on my master's, I was essentially overtraining and undersleeping, and so when I graduated, it was like I made 2 years worth of progress in 6 weeks because I was eating what I wanted to be eating, I was sleeping 9 hours a night, and the biggest thing, I was able to do all of the training stuff that I hadn't been able to do while I was in school, and it wasn't like, oh, I'm hitting the weight room for 7 hours a day. It was, all right, I can do 60 minutes of prehab, rehab every day. I was able to do the little things, and those little things made a huge difference. And then, yeah, went to the Olympics. I felt in a mentally a really good place and had the day of my life. I threw 22 meters 52, and so that was an Olympic record, and it actually broke the Olympic record of Ulf Timmerman, who I had modeled my technique after when I was growing up in high school. So a bit of a surreal moment, but the whole thing happened so fast, and it was just a surprise to me, a surprise to everyone, and it was a polar opposite to the 2020 Olympics. So fast forward 5 years because of COVID, I'd been training off of a sidewalk during COVID because we got kicked out of the university. I'm throwing off a sheet of plywood and lifting in a garage, and then we figured in 2020 we get the call that the Olympics are postponed, and that was honestly what we were hoping for, because we're looking at athletes training in Sweden, and they're in their training hall, they're full bore, they're not shut down, and thinking, man, this is going to be tough to compete against these guys that are still training completely like normal, and I'm throwing off a sidewalk. And so, and then once it was postponed, we kind of got facility access back, all of that. You guys know how it went, trickling through 2020 into 2021. And so once the Olympics were back on, everything's good to go. My training was going really well. And 2021 Olympics was a bit of a struggle. There was the COVID protocol did not make it ideal. For though most people don't know, so travel into Tokyo Olympics was very, very limited. We could only go in 5 days before our competition, and so this is your biggest meet in 4 years. And they're saying you don't get to have optimal travel, you don't get to have optimal prep. The other athletes are flying into southern Japan and compete and staying there before they compete for 10 to 14 days. We're going in last minute, and all of the COVID protocols, essentially what it boiled down to is you take a COVID test every morning and you wait on the results, and no news is good news. So every time the phone would ring, you're just dreading it, because if your phone rings and you get the call, you're out for the Olympics. So you're sitting there in your room, every time the phone rings, it's like, I don't even want to look at it because your Olympics is over. And I remember walking out on the field after 5 days of that and breathing the biggest sigh of relief, simply because I got to compete. I prepared really well, but I got to have the opportunity to compete. And I felt like 10 pounds was lifted off my shoulders. I went out there and had the greatest series of my life and the greatest series in history. And a lot of people don't realize the Olympics is not the optimal place to perform. I think we took 17,000 steps the day of the competition beforehand. That day happened to be the hottest day in Olympic history. It was 116 degrees and 90% humidity on the track. And we were out there for 2 hours. So, and we had warmed up 60 minutes before and had to walk a couple miles. So it was not optimal to throw the second farthest throw of my career under those conditions. Really reflected the preparation, but dealing with that mental development. And it gave me the chance to look at and think back in 2016, I would have been able to handle what I did in 2021 with the expectations and just the adversity. So it gave me a chance to really reflect on my growth as an athlete and as an individual. All right. Yeah.
When you talk to the middle, you got the technical and the power output. How much time would you say you spend, say those final 6 weeks before you compete?
Mm-hmm.
How much time is spent power output? How much time is spent technical mastery?
Yeah, so I would say that I tend to go more towards technical mastery as I'm tapering. If I'm in the fall, starting up, volume's high, I'm focusing more on power output, especially the work side. I'm trying to increase that work number as much as I can, and also increase work capacity so that as I transition through the year, I can handle more load. And so as I get towards the major championship, it tends to gravitate way more towards the technical mastery. And also the biggest impact that I find is limiting the focus on power output and kind of minimizing my loss of power output, because you've got a sliding scale of how much effort you can put out on a given day, and you don't want that obsession with power output to interfere with that technical mastery. So the more that you're dedicating to power output, you're taking away from time that you could be spending on technical mastery. And so as the major championship comes closer, I cut my number of weight days down. Most of the year I hang out at 5 sessions, 5 days lifting, 4 days throwing. As I close in, I'll actually go to double sessions. I find them extremely productive on the technical side. So I'll go to double sessions, and I'll be down to 3 lifts a week, and I try to get as high as 8 throwing sessions per week. So yeah, it's really, really, like I said, that's where the magic happens. And that's really where I have found success and where the focus shifts towards.
What movements are the most important for throwing?
Oh, in the weight room? Yeah, so, I mean, the Olympic lifts are a key. I'm a big hip or hang snatch believer. That's if I had to choose one Olympic lift, it'd be a hang or hip snatch. And most throwers have a pretty good bench, I would say. Me being at 550, I'm actually not even near the top. We've got a couple guys that are over 700. There's 2 guys. So I'm 150 pounds off being good in the bench. And of all the power lifts.
But what are your thoughts? Do you think that you're off, or are they off?
Yeah, I think there's a happy medium. I'm constantly trying to still improve on my lifts, but the biggest thing is you look at, even for me, how much, say I want to add 25 pounds on my bench, the amount of time and effort it takes to go from 550 to 575, that's a lot, and also the risk of injury, it plays a major factor. So at the end of the day, I'm a thrower, I'm not a power lifter. So yeah, I'm trying to optimize, find gains where I can, as long as they don't detriment from the technical side. Because once again, we go back to that sliding scale. There's only so much you can do. And yeah, so I do a fair amount of squatting. I'm a big fan of front squats, as in terms of athletic performance. Big fan of front squats, and I will say I also run a ton of bands. I know you also use bands. In my opinion, the majority of my lifts are done with bands on bench and on squat. Simply because I approach the power output with the sense of I want to maximize power output, and bands allow me to do that, because bands can either increase your CNS response or use upward bands, and you're decreasing that CNS response and increasing your cross-sectional muscle fiber. So I attempt to go into every lift having a set goal of what I'm trying to acquire, and if bands help to complement that set goal, I'm going to use them on pretty much every lift that I do.
Could you describe really quick, I know you and I have talked about before, but the two reasons for doing bands specifically that you just mentioned were
Yeah. Yeah, so the reasons for doing bands. So the way that I look at bands is I've got like I said, I have a goal to accomplish during the said workout, and so if I'm using downward bands, I'm increasing tension, but for me it comes down to inertia. So I'm trying to tax the CNS, I'm going to use downward bands. To throw out an extreme example, the people that saw me squatting the other day, I'm using the Sornex Black Monster bands pulling down, and I think I worked up to 275 pounds on the bar. It's 200 kilos at the top in band tension. But so when I'm hitting that squat and stabilizing, CNS is really firing because I don't have the inertia. I've got 320 kilos on the bar, but it's acting like 120 kilos. I don't have that inertia to stabilize it. If you look at a 700-pound squat, it's slow, I'm here. That weight has a ton of mass, so it has a ton of inertia to want to stay in place. When I take that mass away, I still have that same downward force, but now I'm having to react. The CNS is highly taxed trying to stabilize that mass, and so, or the lack of mass. And the exact same is the polar opposite when I'm using upward bands. I can hit an 800-pound squat for higher reps. It's moving like it's 800 pounds, but it might just be 600 pounds on my back. But so the CNS is not having to stabilize. You're getting a much higher percent of muscular breakdown and recruitment because you're able to train those primaries at a much higher intensity. You're not having to stabilize that and also from a taxation standpoint, if I hit a super heavy squat, all of the smaller stabilizer muscles, because I'm not a power lifter, are relatively weaker than my primaries. So it takes out that stabilizing effect. It lets me tax my primaries at a higher rate and recover faster because those limiting factors aren't taxed like they would be if I hit a pure weight squat.
I know you talked about working out in season, but what do you say about off season?
Yeah, so I mean off seasons that's where the magic happens. To actually winning the championship, it's not nearly as exciting. A lot more sore, a lot more beat down a lot of the time. I've kind of transitioned the last couple of years to an oscillating periodization model. I was sitting there last year thinking I've spent a lot of time on recovery weeks. If you follow the classic 3-1 model, 3 weeks on, 1 week recovery, you're spending a lot of time recovering, and your body does need that. I was thinking, how can I just spend less than 25% of my time on recovery weeks? And as a tested athlete, you have to really, really take that into account, making sure your body is recovering. And so I did a little bit of research and looked at it on paper, did a lot of kind of mock trial runs in my head, and kind of have adapted to an oscillating periodization where I'll hit essentially a strength. I might be on 3s, 4s type of training for 3 weeks, and when it's time for a recovery week, I'll bump it up to 8s, 10s, 12s, and train a completely different system of the body, and that might be 2 weeks. And so when I finish that, my CNS has recovered. I'm feeling overall, I'll be sore, but overall I feel pretty good. The CNS has bounced back, and then I kind of oscillate between that. You still have to take recovery weeks, especially as those oscillations, you go up and down, because then if I do a volume cycle and then a strength cycle, when I come back, that volume cycle is going to be really impressive simply because I've engaged that CNS, I've made some strength gains, those volume numbers blow up, and it's really easy to overtrain with that, but so you have to take that into account. So you still need to have the recovery week, but that's kind of how I approach it, and yeah, it lets me get, instead of being at, say, 25% of my time throughout a month spent on recovery week, I can cut down to about 10. Yeah.
What like for instance, you're here, you're talking, you're off your schedule, things that you do when you travel. You talk about the nutritional aspect of sleep, but any other modalities, just best practices that you have for the group?
Yeah, so I'm here. I actually talked to Bert a little bit about this, about when I was going to travel in and when I was going to get workouts in. The key for me is remaining flexible. I traveled on Wednesday, I did a full training day on Wednesday, flew on Thursday, which was scheduled to be my recovery day. We did a double session yesterday in the weight room, and so that's the key is being adaptive. So you have the set goal for the training block, and obviously things come up, and you have to adapt in some way or another. And so I'm actually going to throw after this because it was meant to be a weights yesterday and a throw and lift today. I moved today's lift to an evening session, spaced them out about 8 hours. And so I'm constantly trying to adapt and change things. And the key is, having a set goal, but remaining flexible. And as a athlete, especially with international travel, focusing on what you can control and adapting to those things and letting go the things that you can't. Took me a little while to figure that out, because anybody that's traveled internationally, you can almost guarantee that something's going to go wrong. You're going to get sick. You're going to get delayed. No one's going to pick you up at the airport, whatever it might be. There's always something. So those are beyond your control, and adapting to that is a constant key. And that's something I've been very proud of throughout my career. I've had delays, and I've had things that have thrown a wrench into things many a time. But in the past 7 years, I haven't missed a day of training that wasn't an unplanned occurrence. So every single workout that I've had written in, I've done. If something has come up, I've adapted to it. But I haven't missed a day outright in 7 years.
What about some of the nutritional details, right?
Yeah.
All the things that are happening.
Yeah, so that's a lot of that comes down to planning and preparation. With traveling to Europe, you get some odd looks when you order 3 entrees off a menu for a single meal for one person. The biggest thing for me is preparation ahead of time. So I'm making sure that I'm traveling with supplements, meal replacements, loaded up on meal replacement bars, whatever it might be. So much of the things that you run into, if you're prepared for, you can work around them. There's always still missed flights, whatever it might be. But if you prepare, like, you will miss a flight, and fellow international athletes will know, like, you pack in your carry-on, you pack the things that you need to compete with. So I've got my shoes, I've got about 2,000 calories packed in my bag. I've got my singlet, so I've got wrist wrap tape, the things that I have to compete, because my bag's been lost at mini meets, and I've competed out of a carry-on. So worn the same clothes for 3 days and competed. So proper preparation can really help you, because if you expect and know that things are going to go wrong, that's a huge key in terms of overcoming those adversities. So right here.
How much of a priority, obviously with the training and everything you just went through, is your body weight and body comp? And how has that changed from probably 2016 to 2021?
Yeah, so in terms of body weight and body comp, my body weight has been, I have always struggled to gain weight. I walked onto campus, my freshman year I was 6'7", 225, and my coaches were like, this guy's supposed to be our thrower? So I've always, it's been a constant struggle to gain weight, but it's been a slow process for me. I've gained 5 to 8 to 10 pounds a year pretty consistently. And I feel like in terms of body comp, a ton of athletes I know put a huge emphasis on that. And in some events, it is very important. If you're a jumper or a sprinter, body comp is very important. And I feel like in terms of measuring it, people can get a little bit carried away, simply because if you're training well and eating well and feeling good, your body comp is most likely where it is. I've seen athletes completely sabotage themselves trying to get under a certain weight, and then when they do get under that certain body fat percentage, they get hurt. So I feel like the emphasis on, if you're performing well and you're eating well and training well, I wouldn't mess with body comp too much. Trying to move that needle is a difficult one. Yeah.
During your Guinness during your world record pro, what was your mindset when you stepped in the ring?
Yeah, so it's a special feeling when you step into the ring and you know you're going to have a good throw. So you put the shot up over your head and get it set in your hand, and then get it on your neck. And when you get it right in that sweet spot on your neck, that light bulb kind of goes on. It's like, oh, we got this one. So set the shot. I'm right here in my wine. It's like, oh, this one's going to be good. And I remember I'm turning and I'm coming out of the back, and so the back is slow, the back is patient, the middle is fast and reactive, and the back is where 99% of throws go wrong. And I remember I shifted my weight and I turned right here, and all I think is, there, don't mess it up, because I've shifted right here and I'm coming right down power alley, and all I'm thinking is don't mess it up, and came through. And once I grounded out, I'm in position and just let it go. And then first thing is finally, because I've been chasing that throw for 2 years.
Did you know that was it when it left your hand?
Yeah, I knew even a little bit before it left my hand. Yeah, once I got to right here and said don't mess it up, and then this right overtakes the left right here, and then the rest is reaction. So once I was here and I didn't crank down, once I was here and I let it pass, I was like, all right, we've got it there.
I noticed that this when it was still in the air.
Yeah, I think I let that one go right here, and I was like celebrating before I was back in double support. Yeah.
Do you do anything when you travel to avoid getting sick? I know the British cycling team became famous for like the soap they use.
Yeah, so I mean, washing hands has been a big topic recently, but
Important for boys.
yeah, zinc, magnesium, vitamin C. A big thing is your sleep as well. Proper hydration plays a huge role. I don't think you can't 100% guarantee you won't get sick, but you can definitely limit it. And also preparing before you leave. So a lot of people have bad habits of like, oh, I'm traveling tomorrow, staying up all night packing, and so you're then beginning that travel day sleep deprived and stressed, so you're so much more susceptible to being sick, where if you can pack a little bit earlier, get a good night of sleep before you travel, exponentially decreases the likelihood that you will get sick. Yeah.
So as an individual athlete, maybe without the support system of a team athlete, where does that excitement come from to not miss a training session, a throwing session for the past 7 years?
Yeah, so the thing that I love about shot, it really circles back to that, is that I'm competing against myself. So when you take everybody else out of it, I can't control what anyone else does. I can just control me competing against myself and trying to beat what I did yesterday or last year. And so when I'm constantly pushing myself to beat myself, I feel like if I gave it my all last year, I'm going to give it my all tomorrow and the day after. And so that sense of trying to be better is really, really what drives me. And also just the constant trying to learn. So I'm always reflecting on what I'm doing and trying to learn, and the excitement going forward of, hey, is this training block going to work? I make a little tweak on whatever it might be in the throwing ring, in the weight room, looking at that. That's constantly what's driving me to be better. And I feel like for anyone that's very successful, they have that external or internal desire to constantly improve. If you're constantly having to be externally motivated, have to have someone yelling at you to constantly be better, I can guarantee you probably won't be the best in whatever field you might be pursuing.
If you're working on some very technical part of your throw, how do you shift your weight room to complement, so you don't disrupt the progress of the ring?
Yeah, great question. So I actually we're almost out of time, so we're probably on last question. So that's a great question. How do I change or make changes on the technical side and how do I change the weight room side? And so some of it is already that's pre-cooked into the program simply because I have different goals with each training day. So for example, Monday, every other Monday is my blasting session. I'm going out there throwing as hard as I can, seeing how the changes that I made hold up. And so on that day, everything's prepped. I'm coming off of a recovery day. We're going out and we're blasting. Wednesday is a pure breakdown day. I'm coming off of a heavy lower, heavy upper Monday, Tuesday. I know I'm going to feel bad, so that's the day I'm going to break things down technically. And then also, if I'm making a technical change, I'm really going to rehearse that. So I don't shift overall on a macro perspective so much to make changes. I'm trying to make changes on certain days that are pre-programmed to be days that I'm making changes. And then I blast away and see if those changes stuck on Monday. So how are we doing on time? Yeah, one more.
What about
Yeah.
thoughts
Yeah.
Thoughts on where do coaches, what are common mistakes? Where do coaches?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So yeah, common mistakes that I see with coaches as a self-coach athlete. The biggest thing I see is there's two sides of the spectrum. There's the coaches that are all in and their program is the absolute best and no one else can compete with it. And then on the other hand, you have the coaches who are constantly looking and searching and trying to make changes. And I think that right in the middle of that is really where the sweet spot is. Coaches that are constantly learning, but still have a focus on their fundamentals and an understanding of their own program. And they're not changing stuff to change stuff. They're changing stuff because they know how it works and they want to implement it. And in turn, I feel like that's where the secret is to coaching athletes effectively. You want to have your athletes believe 100% in your program. To reference a study, I feel like it summarizes this pretty well. So in the 70s, the US was trying to compete with the USSR, and the methods of the study would not fly today. But they had 4 groups of athletes. They had a group that they injected with saline solution and said, we're giving you saline solution. Another one, they injected with anabolic steroids and said, here's some saline solution. This will have no impact on your training. The other group, they said, here's some anabolic steroids, but they gave them saline. The final group, they said, here's anabolic steroids, and they gave them anabolic steroids. The end result was the group that got saline and thought they had saline was 0% strength gain. The group that thought they were getting anabolic steroids but got saline solution, so 0% for saline and thought they were getting saline. The group that got anabolic steroids and thought they were getting anabolic steroids were up 14%. And the group that thought they were getting saline but actually got anabolic steroids were up 3%. And so 3% gain was the true gain of anabolic steroids. 14% was anabolic and thought and knew they were getting it. Anybody want to guess what the group that got saline but thought they were on anabolics was? 11%. So the placebo effect, or the belief that you're getting the best program, or in this case, the best drugs, was 360% over what the actual drugs were. So it's very similar with the program. If you have an athlete that buys into your program and believes, you're getting that 360% performance increase over what the actual program is. So the program matters, but the biggest thing that has an impact is how the athletes are buying it. How you portray your confidence in that program is the absolute key. And so, yeah, you can do some really good stuff. You can do some really bad stuff. If the athletes buy in, they're going to be good. If you're doing good stuff and the athletes buy in, they're going to be great. And so the final thing that I'll close on is something I dubbed just a warning to strength coaches and coaches in general, something that I've dubbed the World Championships effect. And so the way track and field is, it's pretty fragmented, athletes training all over the world. Everyone gets together about the week before, 2 weeks before World Championships. And it's open gym, everyone's training in the same place, everyone's throwing together, competing together in training for 10 days or so before the comp. And then you come and look like in the fall and seeing on social media, and everyone is copying what the winner did during that 1 week. But they're not thinking that they saw 1 out of 52 weeks of the year, and that's not where the World Championship was won. It was won on the 51 other weeks that they didn't see. So there's this concept or human nature to see something that's making what you see a successful person doing, and trying to emulate that and thinking that is what's going to make you the best. In reality, it's making them so much worse because you're not trusting your own program, having confidence in it. So that's the biggest thing I see. I call it, the World Championship effect. You see a small sliver of something successful and you emulate that 100% instead of realizing you're seeing 1 out of 52 weeks, and don't base your whole training program off of that. So thank you guys so much for having me. All right. Great job, man. Thank you.